Before there were mattresses, there were dry leaves over cold stone, and that small difference may have changed human history. Sleep feels simple today. You lie down on a soft mattress, and that is that. But for early humans, figuring out how to sleep safely was a real survival problem, solved slowly, over tens of thousands of years. In this video, we will look at real evidence of how ancient humans slept, one layer at a time. Let's start by imagining something familiar, then stripping it away completely. Picture your bed right now, soft, warm, raised off the floor. Now imagine that feeling slowly dissolving until all that is left is bare, cold stone beneath dry leaves. That is closer to where this story actually begins. Sleep might feel like the most basic human activity there is, but for early humans, simply finding a safe way to fall asleep at night was a serious challenge, one that appears to have been solved gradually through trial, error, and generations of small improvements. Quick question for you. Have you ever thought about how something as basic as your bed came to exist? By the end of this video, you may never look at your mattress the same way again. Layer 1. Bare ground and exposure. The earliest stage of this story likely involved almost no protection at all. A single figure, curled against a rock or fallen log, using the landscape itself as the only available shelter from wind and cold. At this stage, sleep would have meant real vulnerability. Lying on bare, uneven ground offered no insulation from the cold earth, and very little protection from insects, moisture, or approaching danger. This raw, exposed starting point sets the stage for everything that came next. Layer 2. The first bedding. Eventually, evidence suggests early humans began doing something remarkably simple, yet meaningful: gathering leaves, grasses, and moss to place between their bodies and the cold ground. One of the most significant discoveries supporting this comes from Sibudu Cave in South Africa, where archaeologists uncovered plant-based bedding dating back around 77,000 years, with related evidence at nearby sites suggesting similar practices may stretch back even further, to around 200,000 years ago. This was not just simple sleeping on grass. Researchers found that the sedges and rushes used were specifically chosen for having natural insect-repelling properties, and the bedding was layered deliberately, sometimes stacked more than a dozen times over the same spot. Occupants even appear to have burned old bedding periodically, likely to help remove pests, before laying down a fresh layer. Have you ever noticed how even small comforts, like a soft blanket, can make a big difference in how well you sleep? Early humans appear to have discovered that same idea, just using leaves and grass instead of cotton. What the bedding itself reveals. It is worth pausing on just how sophisticated the Sibudu cave bedding actually was, since it tells us more than simply where people slept. Researchers identified specific plant species chosen not just for softness, but for their natural insect repelling and even medicinal properties, suggesting these early inhabitants had detailed, accumulated knowledge of the plants growing around them. This level of intentional selection suggests something important about early human cognition. Choosing the right materials, understanding their properties, and applying that knowledge consistently over generations reflects a level of planning and shared learning that goes well beyond simple instinct. In many ways, this ancient bedding may represent one of the earliest known examples of applied, practical science, long before anything resembling written knowledge existed. Layer 3. Sleeping together on purpose. As this bedding practice developed, evidence also points to a shift in how people slept in relation to each other. Rather than sleeping alone or scattered randomly, increasing evidence suggests early humans began grouping closely together at night, deliberately, not simply by accident. At Sibudu Cave, researchers noted that bedding layers became noticeably more densely packed over time, suggesting larger groups sharing the same sleeping space as populations grew. Sleeping in close physical groups likely offered a practical advantage: shared body heat, which could make a meaningful difference in colder environments, along with the added safety of numbers during vulnerable nighttime hours. This shift represents something important. Sleep was no longer just an individual act of survival. It was becoming a shared, social behavior, built around cooperation rather than isolation. What about you? Do you think sleeping near others, even today, still gives people a subconscious sense of safety? That instinct may trace back much further than most of us realize. Layer 4. Getting off the ground. As human behavior continued to develop, evidence and reasonable inference suggest another important shift: raising the sleeping area off the ground entirely. While direct archaeological proof of raised sleeping platforms from deep prehistory is harder to confirm than bedding evidence, researchers studying later hunter-gatherer societies, along with structural remains from various prehistoric sites, suggest that raised platforms made from lashed branches and woven materials likely became an important development over time. Lifting Having the sleeping area away from bare ground could offer several real advantages: distance from crawling insects, some separation from ground moisture, and a small but meaningful barrier against approaching animals. This represents a shift from simply modifying the ground you sleep on to actively reshaping your immediate environment for safety and comfort. Layer 5. The first true shelter. The final major shift in this story involves the addition of an actual covered structure, a roof. Archaeological sites across different parts of the world, including structures built from wood and, in some cases, large animal bones like those found at certain Ice Age sites in Eastern Europe, show early humans constructing deliberate shelters capable of blocking wind, rain, and cold more effectively than any natural rock formation alone. This final layer represents a complete transformation from where our story began. What started as a single vulnerable figure curled against bare stone had, over an enormous span of time, evolved into intentional, engineered shelter, combining insulation, grouped body warmth, elevation, and now a physical barrier against the elements themselves. Why this story matters. At first glance, this might just seem like a story about ancient camping arrangements, but it actually reflects something much bigger about early human development. Each of these layers represents problem solving, passed down and improved upon across countless generations, long before written language, complex tools, or permanent settlements existed. The shift from lying on bare ground to constructing insulated, elevated, covered shelters likely took tens of thousands of years to develop. Yet each small improvement likely offered a real survival advantage: better rest, reduced illness from colder pests, and increased safety during the most vulnerable hours of the day. A small story to think about. Imagine watching this transformation like a time lapse, stretched across tens of thousands of years. First, a single figure against bare rock. Then, leaves gathered and placed with intention. Then, bodies moving closer together for shared warmth. Then, a platform slowly rising off the ground. And finally, a roof taking shape overhead. Each layer builds directly on the one before it, not as separate, disconnected moments, but as a single, continuous story of humans slowly learning how to rest more safely in an often dangerous world. The next time you climb into your own bed, it might be worth remembering just how long it took humanity to get here. What began as bare, exposed ground gradually became bedding, then shared warmth, then elevation, then shelter, each step representing real problem-solving passed down across an almost unimaginable span of time. Sleep may feel simple today, but its history reveals just how much quiet, human ingenuity it actually took to get there, one layer at a time. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.